think about dying?
Hey sis, welcome to the Mama Trauma Barbie podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Wagner, and while I'm tough as a mother, sometimes I know we're all out here, tired of needing to be one. Buckle up as we land the mothership and all things motherhood in the real world. Before we move on, I'd like to thank the incredible sponsors who saw an opportunity to support women in their day-to-day journeys by joining together to make this podcast a reality. Thank you, Precision Chiropractic, Jennifer Pansition with Edward Jones, Dutch Maids, the Avalon Foundation, and Chica Creative for believing in better care, better support, and better outcomes for mamas and their families in the real world. The information provided in the podcast is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical, health, or nutritional advice. Hey friends, welcome back for another episode of the Mama Trauma Barbie podcast. This next guest and topic is a conversation I get asked quite a bit. And maybe some of you know, and some of you don't. My daughter needed to go to homeschool last year for half of her school year. It was completely unexpected. It was out of the blue, and I was completely unprepared. And so that's what's so brilliant about the conversation that we're going to have with my guest today, Anita Gibson, because homeschool is not what it used to be. It's not the homeschool we knew from 20 years ago. And there's a ton of different reasons that families are starting to consider it. And there are a ton of different circumstances that are meriting it. So I'm excited to have this guest as it's something so many parents are exploring as we look at non-traditional ways to meet more of our neurodivergent kids where they are and where school systems are bringing about a lot of controversy in some of their different policies and programming. And again, parents are up against the line on making all kinds of different decisions as it relates to the health, well-being, and education of their children. So I'm really excited to introduce my next guest, Anita Gibson, who is an author, speaker, and educational strategist. And for over 20 years, she's provided academic strategies and programs for homeschool students and organization. Anita's book, Starfinder, assists parents with finding their children's strengths, talents, and abilities and offers resources to discover their future potential. Anita resides in Maryland with her husband, Glenn, and they homeschooled their 3 children from kindergarten through 12th grade. Their oldest daughter is a diplomat with the U.S. Department of State, and she has earned a bachelor's degree in international marketing and a master's degree in international affairs. Their youngest daughter earned her bachelor's degree in elementary education from Bowie State University, and their son chose the entrepreneurial route and currently owns a lucrative photography and videography business. And he also works full-time as a media production manager in a large church media ministry. So Anita, welcome. We are so excited to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, so I've said this about another guest as well, but it rings true for you as well. But I stalked you. And I found you on LinkedIn, and I was just so grateful for your story and your angle as it related to homeschool. And so I knew that I was going to do this topic, and I was so excited that you finally saw my comment and that we were able to make this happen, because I think you bring so much knowledge and wisdom to this conversation.
Oh, that's awesome. I love what I do, and I love what you do. And so I'm excited to be able to help in any way that I can.
Yeah. So my opening, let's just kind of start there, right? I have a story as to how I got into this, and mine was unexpected. And so, well, I'm sure we'll, both kind of banter back and forth here a bit throughout the podcast on both of our journeys, but let's get your story out there. Mine was a bit more traditional, and let's hear about you and your 3 kids that you homeschooled from the time they were little all the way through 12th grade.
Yeah. So my husband and I, when we got married, we're kind of forward-thinking people. And so back when I started, it was like almost illegal to homeschool.
Yeah.
But I just thought, what an opportunity to be able to connect with my children, to be able to have hands-on ways to decide what they're going to learn and to just to get to know them better. And so when our first daughter turned 3, I was like, I don't know if I can do this, so I'm going to experiment. And so if I can do it at 3, maybe I can do it at 4. And so we started very slowly, and we always said only 1 year at a time, we're going to homeschool. But once we dove in, each year we looked up and it was time again to decide, and we just kept going, and just decided that for our family, this was the best decision. And we looked up, and here we are, kindergarten through 12th grade. And it was the best decision I ever could have made. I think I learned more than they did. I learned more about myself. I learned more about our family. Became a better person investing that time in them.
Yeah. So can you explain that a little bit more? I agree with you. I found things out about myself that I liked, and I found out some things about myself that I didn't when I was home with my daughter homeschooling. Now, granted, she had some massive health challenges at the time, and that was a whole other, right, pathway that we had to
Yes.
navigate through this. But it was a gift, and it was a gift on multiple levels. But could you just talk a little bit more about that? And then maybe that leads into your book as well, and you
Okay.
can explain a bit more on that. I don't know this for sure, but I'm guessing there's a correlation there, right? So can you talk a little bit more about how it changed you?
Absolutely. I would probably start with in my culture growing up, um, parents had a level of authority, and they kind of were the head honcho, so to speak. And whatever they said is what went, whether it was right or not. And so I, being brought up that way, I kind of adopted that same philosophy. And what homeschooling did for me is it challenged me to take a look at why I did life the way I did it. Why did I have certain expectations of my children? Why did I look at them a certain way? And as I began to understand, I had to relearn some things, um, because of how I interacted with them. It really began to just open up my mind to, this is not just an academic choice. This is a lifestyle thing that's happening here. And if I interface with it properly, there will be changes in me, in my children, in our family that will be lifelong. So schooling is a lifestyle. It's not just academics. And so I say that so people can maybe calm down a little bit, because I think the academics are up here
Yep.
and I don't know how to do this and what about that. And no, it's a much more holistic kind of looking at yourself, at your children, and beginning to understand that even if your child is sick, whatever's happening, whatever the trauma is in the family right now, there's purpose even in that. And if you approach it from the right perspective, you'll realize that the challenge that your family is going through right now is actually opening a door to another way to educate your child.
Absolutely. And then that's really the basis of your book called Starfinder, which is really finding the unique capabilities and talents of your children and being able to direct them in a positive outlet, right? And so is that something that also came out of spending more time with your children? I mean, you have 3. I know I have 2, but I'm my mind blown emoji all the time around here are these 2 kids that came from the 2 same parents and just how
Yes.
ridiculously different they are. And
Yes.
so how it challenges me to parent different, to be different. I mean, we know this is why
Yes.
managers even in corporations struggle, right? Like we want to put everything on autopilot and we can't, and it's easier, but it's not as impactful. Like we're human beings with these individual needs. And so I know that was a big takeaway for me as well, just homeschooling
Yes.
my daughter and learning things about her that until I got her home that I'm like, whoa, like didn't even know that this was something that was going on here.
Yes, because there's things that you're not going to know until you're every day with them. My oldest daughter, I don't even remember teaching her how to read. I mean, 2 years old, she's reading, she's she just had this incredible ability to absorb. And so I thought all kids would be like that. And then her sister came along and she learned totally different. And I thought there was something wrong with that. And so I began to interface with her as if something was wrong with that. And that is that book, Starfinder, is the journey that I took to understand that every child is a star. And STAR stands for strengths, talents, abilities, and resources. And they all have them, and they're all completely different. And that I have an opportunity as a parent to take a moment and begin to observe that child and find out what their star qualities are, and then begin to create environments and opportunities for them to grow those qualities, and each of them becomes these amazing individuals that are so unique.
Life happens. You can't predict the unexpected, but you can prepare. Your Edward Jones financial advisor, Jennifer Panzician, can help you with your financial goals, planning with life's ups and downs in mind. Call 419-841-2627 to get started. Edward Jones, member SIPC. I love that. That's also a basis maybe to start what homeschool we thought used to be and now what homeschool is, right? And so a lot of parents are like, oh my gosh, okay, I've heard this is kind of the new rage. Everybody's talking about it, and for a million different reasons, right? Some people aren't happy with the curriculum in public schools. Some people aren't happy with the sports programming. Some people aren't happy with just the behaviors that are going on at schools and the direct confrontation that at times can be present there for certain children. The way schools are set up really aren't advantageous for a lot of children who are neurodivergent. And so, right, it's this very structured environment. Some kids need more time outdoors. Some kids need more ability and flexibility to move and walk around. Or our kids have gone to a Montessori type school where they actually get to pick their curriculum and work on certain subjects or topics as long as they would like, right? Compared to some of these other curriculums. And so, it's just giving parents the opportunity to understand there's other options out there. But what we have done with homeschool is we've taken like what we'll call the 1980s version of homeschool, which is, okay, you as the mom or dad have to stay home and you're now homeschooling all of your children. And it's like, nope, that's not it. I mean, you can be a working parent and there are options. You can homeschool one of your children and the other four, right, can go to school. I mean, there's all of these different options. So can you just outline for us maybe what the old school model really did look like and how we have transitioned and really where we are today with homeschool?
Absolutely. Yes, and you kind of mentioned it. The old school model is mom sitting at the table, and the children are around the table, and everybody has their curriculum for whatever grade that they're in. And when mom checks the work, it's very parent, mom or dad, it's very parent focused. And a lot of there are people that actually still do it like that today. However, there are a number of people who have different dynamics in their family. And so sitting down with your kids all day long is not necessarily the best for them. And wonderfully, over these last 20, 30 years, there have been so many curriculums and programs that have come up. I know moms who send their children to a program 2 or 3 days a week where they have tutors that actually give the students the content and then give them the homework and then give them the grade. And mom is kind of the support behind that. She's checking to make sure they're getting the work done. She may help with if they have issues, or she may call the tutor. There are some who do all online. And there are all kinds of online programs now. There are online programs that are just video based, and you watch a video and you answer questions, and then they have projects and those kind of things. There are online programs where they're actually the tutor is live and there are other students that are on in the classroom, in the virtual classroom. Um, there are just so many. Some students will have a one-on-one tutor. I know of a number of tutors who have homeschool students and they work with them one-on-one with math or with English. So there are so many different ways to do this now. You just have to know why you're doing it. Why am I homeschooling? And you need to probably go write that down somewhere, because there will be days when you will feel like giving up and you will feel like, why am I doing this? And having that written down somewhere will bring you back to base and bring you back to why you're doing what you're doing. And that's why there's so many homeschool consultants that are rising up now,
Yeah.
because this is crazy to try to do this by yourself. There's so much help that's out there. And you will have such a better product, and you will have more peace if you get a coach or a mentor or a Facebook group or someone that could help you on this homeschool journey.
It's why I was so excited to have you on the podcast. I was one of these individuals, again, halfway through our school year. What we now know was my daughter contracted Lyme, and it was very aggressive with the abrupt onset. And so it was really hard to figure all of this out. And so I know more families are finding themselves in that position because a lot more kids are getting sick. And so we're confusing mental health issues with kids who are actually sick and have underlying pathogens or viruses that are causing them to be sick. And so more and more of these kids are going to need a different type of educational outlet than the one that they're currently in. And so I was excited to have you on to help us walk through the advantages, of course, of homeschool, but also making parents aware that even if you pick homeschool, just like regular, the traditional, I won't call it regular, the traditional educational system, right? There's private school, there's different types of private schools, there's public school. There's also different ways to do homeschool. And I think one of the best pieces of advice that I got from a friend that I knew that was doing homeschool when I found myself in the middle of this is, I'm calling and, I'm feeling overwhelmed. And she's like, Alicia. And she said it very calmly. And I said, yes. And she goes, you just need to meet your child where they're at in this process. And she's like, the curriculum will come, right? The structure will come. Like right now, it's just getting your child comfortable and it's meeting them where they're at, and the rest will happen from there.
Yes. That's so true. We, in the traditional world, we're just so used to lockstep, everything has to be certain way. And the idea that, we're taking our child's academics into our hands can feel overwhelming, but it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. This is about lifestyle. It's way more than academics. And you're not going to lose as much as you think you're going to lose if you do just what you said. Figure out where your child is and then gradually take it step by step. If you try to take the whole ball of wax all at one time, you're going to overwhelm yourself and you're not going to be able to do it. But if you can just do one step, like let's get them home. How about that? Let's get some interesting kind of things going on. Maybe we just are doing field trips right now. Or if they're, sick and not able to do that, maybe we're looking at some things on video. We're bringing in what I call delight passion projects, where we're bringing into the home things that they love to do. I had friends who had a son who loved Legos. And so they created a whole Lego world for him in the house and started with their schooling from there and using some of the things that they love. It might be art or other kinds of things like that. It might be gardening. I know students who love that. Starting with something that they love and then beginning to add in some academics connected to those things that they love, especially if they are challenged with levels of illness or other types of challenges that are going on. You don't have to just jump right in. You can kind of slide in.
You can totally slide in, right? And I think that was one of my biggest takeaways. I mean, when you said this challenged you in a way, when you started doing it, and like I said, again, myself, I think one of the things I was really blown away by was, again, I was taking what I only knew, which was this traditional educational model. And so even when I was calling my friend to ask, for advice, it was wild when she calmed me down. But then what was wilder when I was actually going through this, I made it more challenging because I was not staying open-minded to the possibilities. And so let me give you an example. You take the traditional school day, through your mind and with a child with homeschool, and we were getting done in 2 hours, right? And so it's like, am I doing this wrong? Does she need to be sitting in a chair all day? And it's like, no, because you're giving this individualized approach. And so, I mean, you really do get the flexibility and freedom to take a blank canvas and look at your child and figure out, like, they love math, so maybe they can do math 3 days a week, or they love history, and so you could watch documentaries. Like, it was so wild that the only thing I fought that made this so hard out of the gate was myself, and that you really can do this and paint this really beautiful educational experience. And so she got to learn how to bake and cook. She got to go to the store and learn how to socialize. She got to make lists, and we got her a planner like I had, and like she started to learn how to take control of her day and plan it. And so I guess I say this out loud to share on the podcast, right? Like this really does get to go the way that you want, and we're all fighting what we only know, which is this traditional model. But like, you could take, as we did at times, 2 days off if she was having just really aggressive health issues on certain days, and then we would make up for it in the 3 days that we had left. Or like you said, we would do a field trip day, and then it was so amazing to just really recognize that, like, oh, you can do this the way you want to do it.
Yes, if I could just get parents to realize that moms and dads are so stressed because they're comparing the traditional to this new thing. And some parents will try to bring the traditional home, and it's a disaster because they're two different things. Statistics show that in that 5 or 6 hours that a student is in school, between interruptions, transitions, lunch, all of those different things, a student only get about 2 to 3 hours of actual instruction. So if
we see it, that's what we saw, right? Like, that's exactly what's happening.
Then they send the rest of it home for you to do for homework.
Yeah.
So if you're getting 2 to 3 hours of work done on average, that's a great place to start. Sometimes when they get to high school, there can be, more that's going on, but that also depends on your child, what the plan is. Are they going to college and those kinds of things? But it's just taking off the old mindset and connecting with someone you trust that, like your friend could tell you, just calm down. It's going to be okay. Just chill out just a little bit, and you will be amazed. There are enough people out here who have done this now and who have children that are successful at this, that you can believe you can do it.
Well, let's talk about that. I was going to joke when I read your bio because, and I feel like I can be extremely honest with you and you'll take this the appropriate way. But, the old stereotype that is, if the kids that did homeschool were weird, or the kids that did homeschool didn't turn out to be anything. And I'm like, okay, your kid's working at the Department of State, and like, right, you've got these very well-adjusted, brilliant children. And like, that stereotype is just crap. And there's literally no truth to it. Like, again, some of these kids are actually more well-adjusted because they have the executive functioning, and they've got some of these other social skills because they've been doing an array of different things along through their educational experience, not just training their brain to take tests.
That's right. It's quite amazing. And I, as a mom, looking back on it, I'm convinced it was homeschool that enabled our children to become the adults that they are. I have a saying, the thing that irritates you the most about your child is probably a strength. And when you're home with them all day, every day, you definitely start to see more clearly those things that might irritate you. Like our oldest daughter, who is now a diplomat, was a talker. She talked all day long. I had to hide out in the bathroom sometimes because
Done
I
that.
just mentally, and I mentally could not handle all that was coming out. I would try to shut her down and get here, go read this or go do that. And eventually I began to realize I was shutting down a gift. I just had to give her more parameters. I had to teach her when it was appropriate and when it wasn't. But once I realized that this was a gift, we started creating places for it to happen. Drama clubs and this kind of event and things at church, and just opened up this place for her to fully just give out all that she was. And then I had to create margin in my mind, in my life, so that when she started talking, I could hear her. And I had enough peace in me that I could sit and listen. And as I began to shift, now Lauren is a diplomat on her way to being an ambassador, and she gets paid to do the thing that irritated me the most. How about that?
That's such a cool story. Join us again next week as I continue my conversation with the ridiculously amazing Anita Gibson as she continues to share her homeschool journey and additional tips on getting started if homeschool is right for you and your family. Thank you, Precision Chiropractic, Jennifer Panzician with Edward Jones, Dutch Maids, the Avalon Foundation, and Chica Creative for believing in better care, better support, and better outcomes for mamas and their families in the real world. The information provided in the podcast is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered a substitute for professional medical, health, or nutritional advice.